Okay, welcome in for today's session. So this came from your last session survey feedback. I will run the survey again with all the lists so that you can give me priority. This came on the top. So it's healing guilt, shame, and anger. So what came to me is that it's basically an emotional mastery that we are going to practice today. And this means basically getting into what we call emotional regulation. So we will get into a bit into guilt, shame, and anger, the emotions, where they come from, and how they impact, and why emotional regulation is so important. And then we will practice it in our session uh, so that you can learn to connect to it and then, of course, use it as a follow up. There will be a follow up after this session because it needs follow up. And we will, of course, get into Q&A at the end. Okay, so let's get into, and I'll start with why regulation is important because let's try to understand that emotion like guilt, shame, anger are not easy. They are difficult to manage. They are challenging to manage. Now, guilt actually can lead to a lot of self-blame and self-punishment. So everything where you blame yourself, you punish yourself for doing what you say I did wrong, it comes from basically guilt emotion. Now, shame can lead to low self-esteem or social anxiety. So if you feel you're not able to feel to belong, there is a bit of shame there. And then, of course, I'm not good enough. This is one of the common thing many of us say. This comes from shame, the underlying emotion. Anger leads to aggression and violence. So if you feel sometime very strongly aggressive towards something going on outside of you, uh, this means that there is a lot of emotion of anger within you that then creates aspect of aggression and violence or attachment towards aggression and violence. Now, emotion like they can have profound effect on you. Uh, while we have been in this journey with all together, one of the things we found is that the emotion you have inside of you gets reflected on the outside world. So if you feel the external world to be violent or aggressive, there is that emotion inside of you which is holding that aspect. And if you feel that I am not good enough or I cannot relate to this part of the society or this part of my family, etc., there has to be some kind of shame inside of you. And the same is that if you always keep felt to be blamed or and then you blame yourself or you blame outside world, there is guilt. So these emotions have a profound impact on our lives. And emotional regulation is basically a term that is used, and I think everybody of you which is in this journey to heal your life, you have kind of come to learn about emotional regulation because that's why you are here. Coming to this session is part of your journey of emotional regulation, and the whole idea is that it's not that emotions are bad. None of them are bad. Shame, guilt, anger, or any of them are bad. It's just that when you learn to create a healthy, constructive balance or management of those emotions, then you start to be in a way of feeling, your well-being, or you feel regulated. Regulated means in a place of what we call homeostasis or balance. Absolutely, if somebody cuts you on a street while you're driving and you get angry, it's absolutely right. I mean, you will not say, well, it's okay. No, it was not okay. But then what do you do with that emotion? Do you keep it for like days, months, years, or you just let it learn to release it? And that brings up the aspect that when we are unable to manage our emotions in a healthy way, then we basically start to have impact on our thoughts, on our behaviors, and especially in our relationships into at work, in personal lives. Uh, and this is why many of these three emotions play a very important role, especially into everything around us. And then when it gets chronic, of course, then it starts to get into your health, physical health. And there are, I mean, you know that very well, how it can impact your physical health as well when it doesn't get regulated, which means it becomes chronic, which means you live in that emotion most of the day, most of the time. Okay, so let's get a little bit into the origins of these emotions. So guilt often arises when we feel violated from our moral, ethical code. This can happen when we make a mistake or behave in a certain way, especially when you're wrong. Okay, uh, uh, and from an IFS perspective, uh, it 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 is uh, it is something where we feel remorse, which means we feel so bad and take deep responsibility of something that we have done wrong, or somebody has told us and made us believe that you failed to meet certain expectations. Example could be I feel guilty about not be able to protect myself. Okay, I mean, in extreme cases when there is uh, sexual trauma, especially in early childhood, one of the biggest emotions that stays on is about guilt that I could not protect myself. Uh, I know it is not my fault, but I could not help myself or do something differently. So that's guilt. Okay. Now shame can develop when we believe that we are fundamentally flawed or there is something unworthy. This could be caused by a number of factors, including childhood trauma, social conditioning, and cultural norms, often set up by others. So it's most of the time shame is triggered by somebody either in family or when you are in early school or your siblings. So it comes from there. Okay. An example can be like uh, when in much elder form that I feel ashamed about being in an abusive relationship, even though I know it's not my fault, but I can't help feeling that I'm weak and staying as long as I did. Or even if I continue to do now, I feel shame to being in that abusive relationship or at workplace, which is aggressive, etc. And anger often arises when we perceive that our boundaries have been violated, when we feel threatened or attacked. And this can be a result of a variety of situations, such as disrespected by colleagues, by parents, by cut off in traffic, the example I gave. And origin of anger can often be tied to past experiences, which means that you had things going on in the past, and and if you see similar patterns in the present moment, you may get exact same feeling of anger, of trauma, or from abuse. So classically, this is what happens when we get angry at, let's say, I don't know, I'm making it up, but let's imagine you hear something, politicians say something, and you get so angry about it, okay, and you start to react to it. It's because there is in you a pattern which has anger associated to it, and then this gets triggered and you exactly feel the same. Okay, from an IFS perspective, anger is emotion that basically arises when we feel threatened, mistreated, or our boundaries violated, as I said before. Now, an example is I get angry at my parents for not protecting me from my abuser. I mean, this was something which I had my story. And it's interesting, I'm with my mother now, and having gone through healing my life, for all my life, I used to blame my mother for putting me in bed with the abuser and we could get very angry. And now, as I healed, this is all gone. So the feeling of betrayal and trust is gone. So that's what it does. So on the other side. Now, Uh, there's a there's a role of self-compassion in this journey. So and in our practice we do this. So I just put it here because I thought, how can we do the mastery of overcoming these emotions, because they are there, they would be there in each of us. And what can we do about that? So before getting into the session itself, I said, well, there are a few things that does come in mind, and we play them. So one is becoming aware, okay, mindful awareness. So instead of judging and suppressing them, which is classically what everybody we are kind of trained to do, don't show anger, don't show don't show shame, etc., guilt. Actually, through a process, and we do it in our session, a guided session, we actually invite them in, invite those emotions, and we work with them, but in a place of self-compassion. And that's what we do in IFS. You will always see us connecting to the parts and going into a place of compassion, curiosity, empathy, so that they are talked to. So the emotion, or the part that holds that emotion, are talked to in a certain way. We do breathing, we become curious about it, asking questions, and then create, what we do is we create a better understanding. So that's much more about what we call self-talk. IFS is basically talking to your parts. Compassionate touch, we will do it today. One of the good ways to put your hand on your heart. I mean, this is, just rubbing. This is a very nice way to say I take care of you. So I think in many practices, holding hand to your heart or your stomach, belly area is always very good. Uh, in some of the practices which are done for somatic healing, you see a lot about touch, imagery, and visualization. So what we do in our process is, we sometimes, when we connect to the part, we actually say, so we say, go to the emotion. This is what we are going to do today. And we will ask you to feel it, senses in your body, around your body. And sometimes it can be also visual. And this helps you to connect to it. And then you bring in compassion, you bring in the self-talk, and you start to have a conversation, and then you have a deeper understanding of what's going on there. So see, we are going away from being in the emotion and instead to being with the emotion, which is two very different things. And of course, as you know, in the practice, we talk about it a lot. Gratitude is absolutely important. Appreciation for everything that we have. And also in the IFS session, you will always see we go back and thank the parts to come in and to express themselves on being part of your journey to keep you protected. So gratitude helps a lot. So I will keep this, of course, and it'll be in the recording. So I think it's important to know that in your practice, if you can bring all of them, most of them in, this will help you to go and have a different relationship with the emotion. And we are talking today about those three ones, but it can be with any of them. Okay. Now let's get into practice. So I sent to you when I sent these two questions, and they're linked to all the three emotions that are there. So see if you already did the exercise, is perfect. If you did not do, take a moment and see if you can connect to each of these emotions by asking those questions. And whatever comes up, if you can take a moment to write it down. So, guilt, is there anything in my life right now that's making me feel guilty? From the discussion we just had, something comes up. Go there and then think about what is it like for me and how am I responding to those feelings. So this is guilt. Shame, do I experience feeling of shame in my life right now? And can I describe that feel like in my body and how I interact with my thoughts and behavior, how it interacts with you? And have I noticed any anger coming up for me lately with external world, with my inner world, with my world? And see if you can notice what are the triggers, where do they come from. I'll give you a minute. Okay, so we are going to proceed. So what we are going to do is just before we start, we are going to start and connect to each of the emotion. And we'll go one by one. We'll start by bringing in resources from outside within and connect with each one of them and just create a positive relationship between you and each of the part that holds those emotions. And we'll invite them to talk to you, create a positive dialogue between you and them. And then within the session, I will, if some of them would like to, because sometimes parts do hold traumas behind. So I will say, well, you will come back in a following session, which means that because we have recording of that, and you can then use the connection with them, with the part that has a trauma behind, and use one of the previous recording to actually run healing with that part. So you can do that, and that's what we will do as a as a dialogue that you will continue with each of your parts. Okay, here we go. So just become comfortable, and you can close your eyes or focus on your, and or you can keep your eyes open as you would like. And we'll start by bringing in energy and resources into you. Now take your hand onto your heart. Just place it on your chest. And imagine your breath is going into your heart where your hand is, and breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. And allow the breath to flow in and out of your heart. Just find an easy rhythm that's comfortable for you. Now imagine you're floating 500 feet into the air. Imagine there is a beautiful white light coming down from heavens, flowing into your body from top of your head, going into your neck, into your shoulders, into your arms, fingers, and then going into your chest, filling it up into your belly area, filling it up into your hips, into your thighs, to your knees, and down through your feet. The light goes deep into Mother Earth, collects all the power and energy of Mother Earth, and comes back into your feet, through your feet, into your legs, knees, thighs, to your hips, fills it up. Into your belly area, fills it up. Into your chest area, fills it up. Into your shoulders, arms and fingers, fill that up. And into your neck, into your head. Now you're filled with this beautiful white light, the energy of the Mother Earth, into every cell of your body. And see that you're comfortable and your body feels settled in. Now imagine a door in your mind. Visualize yourself walking through this door, entering into your inner world. And there's a place where all your different parts and aspects of yourself exist. Welcome all of them. Now let's bring forward a resource. This can be a person, an experience, or a feeling that brings you a sense of comfort and support. Imagine that resource with you now and allow yourself to feel its presence. And continue to take breaths into your heart and allow yourself to fully embody the feeling of comfort and support from your resources. While all paths are welcome, let them all know to come forward one by one so you can give equal importance to all of them. Now let's bring in the part of you that is struggling with guilt. Invite this part. Think about it. And notice where do you feel it in or around your body. You may have a visual about it as well. And maybe you want to give it a name if you like. Any name. For the purpose of this session, I will call it guilt part, but you can give any name. Now, as you feel or visualize it, notice how do you feel towards this part? How do you feel towards it? And you can breathe into this part of where you feel it in your body. Just breathe into that. And see if you can bring some curiosity or even compassion towards the guilty part. Continue to breathe till you feel curious towards it or compassionate towards it. From this place of curiosity, compassion, ask to this part what it wants and needs from you. And just listen and see what this part has to say. Take a moment to listen in. And notice how you feel towards it as you listen to this part. And see if you can continue to stay curious or compassionate towards it. And now let's ask to this guilt part, what is it afraid would happen to you? What is it afraid of? And you can ask the following question, and then what happens if that happens? And saying, what are you really, really afraid would happen to me? What is your big fear? Notice how do you feel towards it as you hear what it said. And see if you can continue to be compassionate towards it. Now let's bring in the resource part that can support and empower the guilt part. Can you imagine this resource standing beside the guilt part and offering comfort, strength, and encouragement? Now ask to the guilt part, what else needs to happen for it to be less present and feel relaxed. What else needs to happen for it to be less present and feel relaxed? Now, as to the guilt part, since when are you doing this role? How old were you when it started, and what was going on then? And notice how you feel towards it now. Just notice your feeling towards the guilt part. Maybe it shared with you a age when it started. And ask to the guilt part if you'd like to heal something and free it up from pain or suffering. And let the guilt part know that you're going to come back in the following days and work with it and find and heal whatever it wants to free up. Give your assurance that you will come back and work on it. Thank it for coming forward and ask it if it can just be standby and be an approver while you will invite another part. And it's always welcome to stand by. And now let's bring in the part of you that is struggling with shame. Invite it in, connect with it, and notice where do you feel it in or around your body, or you have a visual on it. And give it a name if you would like. We will call it shame part. You can give another name. And just notice how you feel towards this part of you. And see if you can bring in some compassion and empathy to the shame part. Can you reach out to this part and comfort it with a message of understanding and support. Now take a moment and ask to the shame part what it wants you to know about itself and what it needs from you. Just listen it. And notice how do you feel towards it. And see if you can bring back compassion and curiosity towards it. Now ask to this shame part, what is its intention for you? And what is your intention for me? And let it respond. Now ask to the shame part, what is it afraid would happen to you? What are its fears? Ask it, what are you really, really afraid would happen? What is your ultimate fear for me? And let it respond. Notice how do you feel towards it and see if you can be compassionate toward this part of you. And if you're getting what it told you, acknowledge back saying, yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying. And notice how it feels. Now ask to the shame part, what else needs to happen for it to be less present and feel relaxed? Now ask it, since when are you doing this role? How old were you when it all started and what was going on then? Tells you an age. Now ask to the shame part if it would like to heal something and free it up from pain or suffering. And if it says yes, let it know that you promise to come back in the following days and work with it and heal what it wants to free up. Thank it and just check in, how do you feel towards it? And let it know. Ask to the shame part if it can stand by, and if it like, it can be an observer while you now invite another part. And now let's bring in the part of you that's struggling with anger. Invite it in, connect with it. And notice, where do you feel it in or around your body? Or do you see some images? Connect to it and notice its presence. And give it a name if you like. We'll call the anger part, but you can name differently. And just notice how you feel towards it. Let's start by bringing in compassion and empathy to the anger part. Can you reach out to this part with compassion and empathy or curiosity, just to know it better? And ask it what it wants you to know about itself and what does it need from you. Just listen in and see what this part has to say to you. Stay curious. And notice, how do you feel towards it? when you hear what it had to tell you. And see if you can be curious or even compassionate towards it. Breathe into that if needed. Breathe into the area where you felt it in your body. Till you feel curious or compassionate towards it. And see if you want, you can bring in the resource that can support and empower the anger part. Can you imagine this resource standing beside the anger part, offering comfort, strength, and encouragement? Now ask to the anger part, what is it afraid would happen to you? And ask, and then what happens? What are you really, really afraid would happen? What is your big fear? See if you can acknowledge you understand. And notice, how do you feel towards the anger part? And see if you can be compassionate towards it. Now ask to the anger part, what is your intention for me? How does it want to impact your life? Notice, how do you feel towards it? and see if you can go back to compassion towards it, hearing what its intention is towards you. Now ask it, since when are you doing this role for me? How old were you when it started? And what was going on then? Now ask to the anger part if it would like to heal something and free it up from pain or suffering. See what it answers. Let it know that you promise to come back the following days and work with it. Find it, the pain, and release it, heal it. And now ask it what else needs to happen for it to be less present and feel relaxed. And notice how you feel towards it. And if you understand what it told you now, and acknowledge it back. Now take a moment to bring all the three parts that came in and extend your gratitude and appreciation to all of them that they came in to share. See if you can thank them all. And take a moment to share with them your vision of life for you. What do you want? And now that you are connected with these parts, it's important you let them know that you will come back and connect with them for a few days, daily basis. And if there is anyone that wants to heal something You will also work with them to heal. And notice how you feel towards all of them. And let them know. And when that feels complete, slowly begin to be back. You can gently open your eyes and see if you want to take down